Sorry, all right. Camera people need to answer. Okay, I want to welcome everybody to our latest speaker series program here at the museum. Thank you all for coming. I've really been impressed by the turnout. And that reminds me to put my phone on vibrate. And our speaker for today is our museum director, JenniferGarey. Before I introduce her, I just want to make some quick comments. Our speaker series will be going on hiatus for the month of August while we're involved with preparations for the Tastings Festival, which takes place in August 29th. And you each have cards about this festival, and please take some time to look if you haven't already signed up. We'd like to welcome you to come. And there's also, you can go to the website, RBHistoricalSociety-SpeakerSeries for more information. It's our annual fest, and it's always a fun event for people to enjoy. When we resume in September, our speaker will be Mr. Jack Latimer. He's the director of the Vista Historical Society, and he'll be doing a program on aspects of Vista history. He spoke for us last year, and he's a speaker we always enjoy very much. So now let me introduce our speaker for today, JenniferGarey, who's the director of our museum, and she's a person with eminent qualifications to talk about our subject today. She, in addition to being our museum director, she's the president and CEO of Arts and Antiquities, which is a museum consulting and freelance curation company. She's also a Governor of California appointed commissioner for the California Native American Graves Repatriation Oversight Committee, and an adjunct professor at Palomar College in the American Indian Studies Department. Jennifer holds a graduate degree from Cambridge University in England and an undergraduate degree from Occidental College in California. We're very honored to have her assume our directorship, and we're honored to have her as a speaker today. So without further ado, I'll introduce JenniferGarey.
Thank you so much for coming out. I appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to talk about basically the treasures in your attic. And the first thing that I was thinking you should do is, if you have a treasure, does anybody have sort of a treasure in mind, something that they kind of came here thinking about, they wanted to know more about, or, okay, good. Okay, so keep that in your mind throughout the whole process. If you didn't come with a treasure, I brought a few. You have to give them back to me, though. And I will pass this box around. Please help yourself to a treasure, and that will be your treasure for the duration of the talk. Okay, so what is a treasure? And that's what we're going to talk about first. We're going to look at a couple different things. What is it? How do we sort of signify its value? We're going to look at how it might disintegrate, so therefore we need to know how to take care of it. And then what you want to do with your treasure. So that's what we're going to talk about. Okay, so what would you think a treasure would be? Sometimes we think a treasure is something that's old, right? We say, oh, it's really old. So maybe it's something rare. Maybe it has some sentimental value, so something maybe that's passed down through your family. Kind of your treasure or something like that. Or maybe it's associated with something or someone, like Lincoln's hat. This is Lincoln's hat. So that's an association. Otherwise, it's just an old hat. So it might be significant that it's old, but it's Lincoln's hat. So that makes it particularly important as a treasure. Okay, so think of your object in terms of why it's significant to you. And those at the box, it's probably not very significant because this is the first time you've seen that quote-unquote treasure. Okay, so we want to look at our object. And this is when I say look at it, and you'll notice I say look at it because we're going to look at it in different ways. We're not just going to look at it like we're looking at it. We're going to actually look in different ways. So what is it really? How is it significant? Why is it important? And some of these treasures that are coming around to you that may not look significant now, we're going to talk about how they can be significant as objects that can talk, to tell a story. You know, a little bit of that too. And then how do we care for it? What do you do with it What do you do with your important piece? And then what is it worth? We're going to talk about what value means. And there's so many variations of value when we talk about museum objects or just personal objects. So we'll talk about that as too. Okay, so there's two ways to look at your object. The macro, on the macro level, so the huge sort of overview of it, and the micro level. And we're going to talk about those two ways to look at your object. So how do we look at it on the macro level? Macro meaning, obviously, its context, okay? So what I mean by context is what is its place in our world? What is its place in our society? What is its place in our history? That's the macro level. How is it significant to our family? How is it significant to our state, our country, our nation, as human beings? These are all questions that we talk about. We talk about the macro level. So why is it important to us? So first I want to ask you what this is.
Sports jacket.
Sports jacket? Everybody agree with that? What about this? Alcohol. And that? And that?
I don't know.
Yeah. Do they seem invaluable and significant in any way?
No.
Just, what's that?
Fencing jacket.
Fencing jacket? Okay. So it's kind of just stuff. Yeah, this kind of stuff, a sweater, golf ball, right? Okay. Well, what if I was to tell you these are who they're associated with? What if I was to tell you that's Mr. Rogers' sweater? That's just not any jacket or sweater. That's Mr. Rogers. But that golf ball was Bing Crosby's. Oh. So now it's not just a golf ball anymore, is it? That's not just a telephone. That's LBJ's telephone. Ooh. And this is World War I gas mask. I'm not sure how they exactly worked yet at all, but that's your gas mask. So now they have this significance. You have an association with an individual. Right here, these are all individual. And this is association with a huge event, so historical. So now these objects take on a whole new meaning. And that's the part of the macro level. What's its place in history to us? What does it mean? And beyond that, all the kinds of stories that you can tell with a telephone, for instance. What kind of story? What was he talking about? Who was he talking to? What was the significance in history? This is how objects can talk. Okay, here's another one. Any idea? Okay, so those are actually showing you, obviously, some age. The reason they're important is age and if they're in good condition. So this is something that's old. So obviously, so the first one is a Duncan Fife side piece, Chippendale period chairs. So these are representative of artists, artisans of a period, turn of the century here, 1765 here, that are representative of an artist's style. So within that sort of decorative arts studies, these would be significant because of that. They're also in fairly good shape, which makes them then more valuable. The Chatty Cathy doll, same thing. 1959, first talking doll. So it becomes significant in sort of art history. So that's its age, its condition, but yet what it represents. Look, how about these guys? Any idea?
Like bronze, historical, old.
Historical, yeah.
Looks like
Old and
Olsen.
okay, they're scarce, they're rare. So that was a Mayan bowl. There are very few of those left, just because of the conditions, and we'll talk about why that didn't last very long and why certain areas don't have objects and certain areas do because of the environment. We'll look at that. But so it's rare. The other one is the hairy man. He was actually in the Museum of Man for a long time, and they were made by Playboy Enterprises for a movie called The Naked Ape. So the other thing is sometimes they're just odd, and that's kind of why they're interesting too. So that could be those are different ways. Okay, what about this? Soil pillow. Someone died there. You think so? You're right. So it's just a dirty pillow. What's so great about a dirty pillow? Well, this is a pretty great dirty pillow because not only it hits all three. It's associated with Lincoln, So that's hugely significant. It's associated with a historic and symbolic event, his assassination, which changed a lot of things. It's rare. It's the only one. There isn't any other Lincoln pillow that he bled on. And it is a bit odd on top of it. So it kind of hits all of those things. So Lincoln's pillow is a pretty great artifact. Not only that, but they're talking about finding ways to pull some of the DNA out of that too, which would be a whole other interesting phenomenon when you have Lincoln's DNA. Some people are looking at some, so he may have had some diseases, and if they pull the DNA out, they can look and see if he had some diseases. So there's a lot of debate about whether they should even take the DNA or not. But. Okay, so your object. So you have an object in your hands or in your head. How is it significant? What is it about this object? Is it old? Is it rare? Is it just valuable monetarily? Is it something that is high value that can be sold? In other words, that is a value. It's expensive. Is it sentimental? Is the object you have in your head or in your hands sentimental? Probably not the one you have in your hands, but maybe. And then is there any associations with it? So if you have an object in your head, is it your grandmother's or your great-grandmother's? That sort of thing. That could be the association. Okay. So now we've had this idea of what it is to look at an object on its bigger context in the macro. So let's talk about the micro now. Okay, so there's kind of two. Did anybody ever play that game, 21 questions? And the first thing is it organic or inorganic? Okay, well, it's the same idea. So is it organic or inorganic? That is going to determine a lot about how you take care of it, because that's going to determine how it falls apart. Everything falls apart. We all know that. We all fall apart. Everything falls apart. Everything is temporary. So the weird thing about museums is they have a dual purpose. One thing is they have to sort of bring it available, make it available for people to learn from it and see it and enjoy it, or get some information from it, which is why we keep it. But we also have to preserve it forever, which is impossible. And it's impossible to do those two things. So how can we slow the process down? And so the first thing we look at is it an organic or inorganic? So organic objects would be things, obviously, like that game, that are made from living plants or animals. So in this case, this is a silk kimono. So silk is from a living animal. They would include things that are wood, paper, textiles, leather, skins, horn, bone, ivory, grasses, bark. Anything that sort of comes from the environment naturally would be organic. And inorganic, obviously, would have a geological origin, so metals, ceramics, glass, stone, some pigments that you would find, some paint pigments are going to be inorganic, and some are going to be organic. So that's why paintings are very hard, because sometimes they have organic and inorganic materials, and that's what we call composite objects. A lot of objects are composite objects, so they have mixed. They have organic and inorganic. So in a painting, you may have a wood frame. You're going to have a canvas that is going to be made from cloth. Those are going to be organic. But your paint itself may be inorganic, based in some sort of iron oxide or metals, or it may even be organic, like a tempera, and actually have egg in it. Then you may also have the glue or what's affixed on it too, which could be organic as well. A lot of times they're made from horseshoes and things like that. So you have this whole composite on this micro level of various types of materials and how they're going to react in an environment. Okay, so when you're looking at your object, you're looking at it at two levels, the microscopic and the macroscopic. Right? So the micro is how it's made. So the macro tells us how to care for it, how it disintegrates. So, and then also its potential inherent vice. This is something you hear in museums a lot too. Inherent vice means it's going to just hurt itself. So a lot of times, if you notice on all of our contracts and anything like that, we'll say we're not responsible for inherent vice. So that saddle that has leather and metal and everything on it, that's its inherent vice. It's going to hurt itself because it's got two different, the metal is going to corrode the leather and things like that. So that's something we can't do anything about. So that's inherent vice. So macro tells us what's significant, what's the story. Both of those things then give us that object's value. So that's how we decide. Value in the broader sense, we'll talk about what that means. So it could be cultural value, or it could be monetary, or both. All right, so the Declaration of Independence. which is gone for the most part. And this is why. What do we know about it at the micro level? We know what it means. We know, I don't need to tell you about what the Declaration of Independence means at the macro level. I think we all kind of know that one. But the micro level, what does it mean at the micro level? It's written on parchment, so we know that's organic. It's a treated animal skin, so it's usually sheepskin. So we have basically a leather type material. It's inked with iron gall ink, which basically, does anybody know what that is? It's basically an ink that you take metals and sulfate and you mix it with those little balls that grow on trees because the trees are infected with mites and things. It's very odd. Anyway, so that's mixed together. So you have organic and inorganic in your ink. So those are two different composites within the ink on top of everything. So already it's in a bad way. But then we decided for years, we pull it out of its storage to show people. At one point, they paste it on a wall, so now they're adding more materials by adding paste to it, adding more materials, pasting it on a wall to show. It's got sunlight on it, and it basically deteriorates so much that at this point, it's in a bulletproof encasement that's titanium. All of the oxygen is pulled out of that case, and it's only filled with argon gas, basically nitrogen gas, inside this case. Because if that was to open and you were to take it out, it would just disappear. It's so fragile. It would be, so that if anybody saw that movie with Nicolas Cage, that is complete bogusness. They don't move it around, they leave it there, they don't touch it, and you certainly couldn't carry it around because it would just be dust. That's how bad it is. Okay, so your object that you're thinking of or you have, is it organic or inorganic? Anybody want to share?
Porcelain.
Porcelain. Okay, so inorganic.
With painting, gold, and
Okay, so mostly inorganic.
yeah.
What do you guys?
Organic. I think I got a catch word.
Organic, okay. Anybody else?
Metal, inorganic.
Metal, inorganic.
Inorganic.
Not organic.
Positive.
Plastic, right. Which is an interesting, we'll talk about plastic.
I think I have composite of metal and.
You do have a composite. Everybody can see our thing. Okay, it's good. So now you know how it might fall apart. So now you know how it's really made. And not really mad, it's really made. But it's okay. What is made of and how do we care for that? So now you can say, okay, I've looked at it at the micro level. I know what I've got. I've got a composite, I've got plastic, I've got porcelain, I've got metal. So thank you. So how do we care for that? Okay. So this is what we like to call agents of deterioration. So we want to look at what are those forces that then affect those objects that cause physical damage, chemical damage. And damage can be something we see right away, like if we drop a porcelain vase, we're going to see that damage right away. Or damage can be something we don't see for decades, and we see it later. Or it may be something that we won't see for generations. So in the museum business, we have to think in terms of generations. So we treat things like we want our great-great-grandchildren to see them like we see them. And so that's part of that. We'll talk about that. So obviously direct physical force happens most often by improper handling. It's dropping something. Picking something up the wrong way, and it breaks because you don't see where it's fragile. So display techniques that aren't good. You hang them on a nail, and the nail falls out of the wall and it falls on the ground. Things like that. Those are huge, catastrophic events. Obviously, earthquakes are not good. Can't do much about that, but there are a few things that museums do. War is never good. We witnessed that recently. That was terrible. So war is never good. And sometimes your shelf will collapse too, just if it's not done well. So these are little things, but they are things you see immediately. You see the immediate effects of them. Thieves, goes without saying, that's not too good. They're usually probably not handling it correctly either. Obviously vandals. But improper handling is the largest damage in museums. So most damage that happens in museums is improper handling, which is, because they have all these things in place for environment and everything like that, but a lot of times that's what it is. Usually for our home collections, you tend to see improper cleaning, and you tend to see that being in storage issues. Those are the biggest. So a lot of times people want to fix their objects and they'll clean it and cause some damage. But we'll talk about that too when we talk about how you want to use it. Fire is the worst. And I know some of you have probably witnessed that. Fire destroys it completely. There's nothing you can do about that. When a museum has a fire, that's it. It's gone. So sometimes they choose for water damage over fire damage because you can fix that. The other thing fire does is it deposits smoke. So think about smoke as an element and it's being laid across. If anybody smokes or knows people who smoke and you get in their car or get in their house and you smell it, that's permeating within on a microscopic level in fabric and in things that then deteriorates within there. So then water damage obviously can swell things. So if you've ever put picked up your newspaper and it got in the sprinkler and it's swollen, there's an example of that. It can corrode metals. You've seen metals corrode, like a potted plant and a brass thing, and you see how it happens. And, it can delaminate things, it buckles things, it loosens joints. So now these things can be fixed, unlike a fire where you have just ashes. So this is why sometimes museums choose water damage over that. So, contaminants obviously disintegrate, discolor, and corrode. And contaminants can be pollution, and we talked about smoke pollution. They can be liquids like plasticizers or grease, applied cleaners. So when you're cleaning an object, you're actually adding an element to it. So every time you clean something, every time you wax your table, you're actually adding a layer of something, of a micro level onto that piece. And then dust. Tape. Well, tape is a terrible thing. I'm sure that and you can see that's almost pretty close to immediate, after even Post-it notes will leave a residue. We think Post-it notes are okay, but they're not. They will leave a residue, and in 10, 20 years, it'll still be there. The Post-it note won't, but that residue won't. Pests, obviously, are also bad, and we've seen this too in terms of they consume our collections. They'll cut them, they'll graze them, they'll excrete on them, birds, small mice, obviously mold as well causes damage. These all mold is considered a pest in this too. Small children, no, I'm just kidding. Radiation is the worst. Radiation basically is light. So ultraviolet light and light. And we've all seen that when we leave our newspaper for a couple days and we come home and half of it's yellow and half of it isn't. That's light damage. That's the fastest way that you can see it. But you can see it in all kinds of things. Light is probably one of the worst culprits out there. Right up with fluctuating temperatures. So fluctuating, and this is the key, fluctuating temperatures and humidity cause damage. Stable environments don't. This is why they found mastodons stuck in ice. They're in ice, but it was stable. They find, the bogmen they found in a bog, but it was stable. Desert caves, they find things because it's stable. Environments where it fluctuates, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, you're not going to find a lot of things. So you don't tend to find organic materials, say for instance, in South American sites. You're going to find stonework, you're going to find stone temples, but not a lot of the other stuff because the environment fluctuates so much that things aren't going to decay faster. So that's part of so what you want is stable. And I put the O-ring example here in terms of what polymers, and that's plastics like your thing. So too low, do you remember when the shuttle crash and they decided it was the O-ring, the plastic was too cold. It was too cold, it broke down, and it wasn't able to be flexible and therefore caused that huge accident. So that's this, embrittlement from too low of plastics. And the same with humidity. Humidity and temperature tend to go together a little bit, so we control both of those to keep it as stable as possible. Okay, so how do you know? How do you recognize the symptoms? Talked about a newspaper, you can see that. If you look at it on a regular basis, you can kind of see it. My parents have a painting. Actually, it's a picture that was painted by this guy who kind of took a picture and then painted it. And us, my brother and I were kids. And she put it right by the window. And I kept saying, if you want to keep that, don't put it there. She never listened to me, of course. And now, half the painting, which is fine, okay, I hate that painting, half of it is completely, faded. So, you know, you have to kind of watch it. You're going to have to control the environment. So it's thinking about what you're doing with your object and how you want to handle it, where you want to store it, how you want to display it. Think about security things too. For instance, if, you know, how you want to handle that in a situation where, you know, if there's a fire or something. These are things to think about. Okay, so here's an example. Most common problems in our homes are pests and pets. That's the worst, right? Temperature, relative humidity, and light. So here's an example of a sofa. For a long time, this, I guess, was pushed up against it because you see, if you pull it away, you see this is the original color. This is light damage. So sunlight was on this, and this is all faded from light damage. And the only way it happens over time, so you don't notice it until you move this away. And then, oh, that's what it looked like before. So those are the kinds of things to think about. Pests, what to do if you find pests. You don't want to rush and kill them because that's not going to solve your problem, actually. They're just going to come back. What the best thing to do is take the object and put it, I found the best thing is just put it in a Ziploc bag. If you can, if it's small enough to put it in a Ziploc bag, put it in a Ziploc bag. I know people that have, you know, plastic covered things in the museums, like large items too. Because what will happen is they just, technically they suffocate. Sometimes you can drop a temperature down. We've done that before in museums as well to get rid of the pest. So find out where they're coming from. So this is the key thing. Where are they coming from? If it's something like a crack in your home somewhere, you can fix that as opposed to just killing the pest. Okay, so how do you keep? You know, we don't have a museum in our house, and we don't want to live in 50% humidity and 55 degrees all the time. So how do we deal with this in our real lives every day when we have objects at home? So you just want to do things like think about it. Don't place it in front of an air conditioner or heater. Don't do what my parents did and put it right by a window that gets light, raking across it every day. So just think about the environment that you're putting it in. That's the first thing to do. And here's a picture of the bog man I was telling you about. So he obviously survived from the Iron Age from 400 BC in a wet bog. But it was a stable wet bog, so they would pull them out. Just an example of what some of the humidity can do to a painting. This is what we would call buckling. Light. It's fast and it's total loss. This is the thing about light. You can't repair that. Light damage can't be fixed. Things like water damage or even pests or even maybe some inherent vice can be dealt with. Paint lifting can be dealt with. Conservators can deal with that. Light damage, you can't fix it. That's especially on fabric. It's gone. So if you want to keep it indirect, eventually it will fade, but slower, slower rate. That's the main thing. Handling, most important. So look at your object before you pick it up. Look at your object now and think about how you would handle that. For instance, if I'm picking up a coffee mug because I'm drinking coffee out of it, I'm going to take it by its handle, right? I'm going to pick it up by its handle, I'm going to drink from it. Well, if it's a museum object or it's fragile or it's old, if you pick it up from the handle, that's that one area that's been used so often that it's going to be weak. So a lot of times if you pick it up from the handle and it's been picked up that many times, it can break. The handle can just come off. So we always use two hands and we always pick it up. Almost like a silly baby. We care for it that way. So before you go anywhere with it or walk anywhere with it or before you pick it up, think about it. Look at it. How should I pick this up? It's going to stabilize it most you can. And then don't add to it if you don't have to. If you don't have to, please don't add to it. Like cleaners, tape, post-it notes. Here's tape. You guys have all seen that, but that'll do. So that's, if you don't have to do it, don't do it. Okay, so this is inherent vice. Obviously, there's nothing we can do about that. Here's a metal right here and leather, and you're going to get this kind of corrosion. That's just how it is. A conservator can clean that off, and that's fine. But to remember, this isn't just something added. This is actually part of this piece. So when a conservator goes and cleans a piece of metal, like for instance, even when you clean your silver, what you're doing when you clean your silver is you're removing that old brown or that kind of gray corroded stuff. That's actually your silver. So what you do is the more and more you clean it, the more and more you're removing the actual silver off of your piece. So when a conservator cleans something, they're actually removing original material. So you get to a point where you kind of have to stop doing that, because eventually you're not going to have anything left at some point. Okay, so when that's not enough, you have an object, what do? Do you want to restore it or do you want to conserve it? So these are two things, and people tend to get these two things mixed up. What is conservation, what is restoration? Conservation is that slowing down. The idea for a conservator is to take an object and slow down what could generally happen to it, or what's going to happen to it. I mean, they're trained in a way to do that. They're trained by that type of material. A metals conservator does metal, they don't do paper. Paper conservator does paper, they don't do metal. You know, they're all specialists because they know exactly what that micro level and that chemical level is. And what they do is they document what they're doing because this is part of the story of the object. It's kind of important to know if things have been changed on it. And they do what they can to stabilize it. Restoration, on the other hand, is to make it look like new. So restoration is more intensive. It's going to affect your object more, and it may cause damage to it. This is interesting. When I was at Treasury Department, we were doing a complete renovation of the centennial year of Treasury. And we had a piece that was all the stamps, from, early times of Treasury through, 1800. So this beautiful piece of stamps that went on tour during the centennial. The person in charge at the time, I'm not even going to call her a curator because she did this. The person in charge at the time decided, that gilded frame just isn't pretty enough. So we're going to take that out, we're just going to restore that whole frame. But by doing that, she had to remove all the gesso, because the frame's wood and it's built with a gesso and then it's got gold gild on it, so the gold leaf is put on top. By taking all the gesso off, redoing it, she removed an early technique of gesso and gilding application. So by making it new again, she actually removed all the history, all that history about gilding technique. For those who are interested in gilding technique, that was huge. And what it did ultimately is devalue the piece from 5 million to a few 100,000. So it's really, so you might think about that when you actually make those kinds of changes. Not only to not even to mention the fact that the history of it is completely ruined. So conservation is needed when it's damaged to a point that the object itself is in danger. So here you can see this is the top of a frame. Here's a painting, and this is paint flaking off. So this eventually will be lost, and then you won't have it. So that's when the museum will say, okay, you need to conserve that. Or if you have a painting that you bought at Sotheby's and you want to keep, you would get a conservator there, because then it's going to become in danger and you're not going to have it anymore. You're going to actually lose it. So they're obviously highly trained, not only in the ethics of it, so in other words, not removing key elements to the piece like that frame, but in that type of material. So if they do photographs, they understand everything chemically about photographs and how to do that kind of conservation. Okay, so notice if there's sunlight, if you see things like this, which we call this buckling, if you see this, water stains, insect droppings, the best way to know if you have insects if you don't see them eating it is you see what we call frass, which is basically their poop. And if you see that, then you know you have a little problem there. So things like that. So now you know why your object is important. We talked about the macro level. You know how it's made of, and so therefore you know how it'll fall apart. So now the question is, what do you want to do with your object? So do you want to preserve it? And there's levels of that. Do you want to enjoy it? Obviously, you want to do that, right? Store it, sell it, donate it. Is it an heirloom? In other words, are you going to pass it on in your family? So these are all things to look at. Okay, so our homes are not a museum. So how do we enjoy our treasures and care for them? So it's the same thing. So I have a quilt here because a lot of times people like to use their quilts on their bed. That's what they're for. So you have your grandmother's quilt, and you can either do one or two things. You can say, it's my grandmother's quilt, and I want to save it forever, so I'm going to put it in a box and put it in the closet in a cool place, and I'm going to take care of it forever. But then what happens when you do that?
Can you enjoy what
You don't enjoy it, yeah. So you make that decision and you say, what does this object need to be? And if I want to enjoy it, I'm going to put it on my bed, and yes, I know the sunlight may get to it on certain days, and yes, I know I'm going to have to wash it. So, what's the best way then for me to maintain it, but yet enjoy it? I have a couple of pictures that I really, really love that I want to keep for a really long time. And so I have them in a certain place that gets less light, and I keep this one window closed because I want to maintain those pictures. It's something I know is going to fade, but I want to enjoy it. So I just close that window, and that's the way I handle that. But that's what we have to do. We have to kind of make that decision. How do we want to do that? If you decide I'm going to store it, then there's a couple places you can get archival storage. One thing you want to stay away from is cardboard. Cardboard actually migrates acids into your object. Because this is the other thing. Whatever you're storing your object in becomes another object. So in other words, you have materials in your box. Your box is made out of materials, or whatever your bag, plastic bag, whatever you're putting it in is made out of materials that now come in contact with your object, and those two interact. So you have to think about where you're storing it as well, because your materials should be what we call inert. In other words, they shouldn't connect to your object. So if you put a piece of paper in a cardboard box, or even a blanket in a cardboard box, after so many years, you're going to see a yellow stain on it. And that's acid migration from the acidic box. So these are, that's that micro level that gets further and further. So you want to get things that are inert. So maybe you want to donate to a museum. Maybe that's the way you want to go. Obviously, a museum's going to keep it in perpetuity. They're going to do their very best to take care of it, obviously. It's going to be recorded. You'll have your name in there forever. You also have a tax deduction if you want. But when you do that, obviously, after your tax deduction, the museum gets to decide whether they display it or don't display it, or whatever happens after that. So that's something to think about, too. Okay, so you know now how to look at your object, right? The macro level, the micro level. Maybe you have an idea what you want to do with it. And we'll talk about values. But I want to hear a little bit about some of you who are thinking of your objects. So your porcelain vase, what's the significance now of that?
Well, it is from Europe, and it's at least 120 years old, and underneath it doesn't say Meissen. It has an R, almost as wax or oil. So, and it is completely covered with gold. It's very thin porcelain. You can always look through it.
Oh my.
It's
okay, so you have old. That was one of the things. You had. Did you say it was? Did you have a family connection to it?
Yeah,
yes,
my aunt.
That's right. So you have an heirloom situation, a family connection association. You have the fact that it's old. You have the fact that it sounds rare. When something is so fragile as that, when it's a porcelain that you can look through, you can bet, particularly if it's old, there are few of them around, because there has been a lot of dropping and breaking, and so especially if you've got something fragile, you can probably guess that might be also rare. So those are good things to think about in terms of then how you care for it, what it's made out of, and that sort of thing. Anybody else have an object in
You're
your
talking
hand?
about things in the home that we have? Or
Yeah.
two items. One's a 83-year-old tapestry of a deer from the World's Fair of 1933. It's beautiful. I have it hanging in a place where the sun can't get at it.
They're very good.
And I just want to carefully. The
Excellent.
other is an English golf ball from about the year of 1930, and they were definitely smaller than the American golf ball, which has simply changed. Now they're all American size.
Right.
So it's a wee bit smaller,
Huh.
and I have that between the gold and a silver golf ball, real golf ball.
Nice.
Little.
Nice.
And
So that's interesting too, the
that's
history
gone.
of
I
it.
can't find any of those anymore.
Right, so that's something that's rare. And that's also, yeah, those kinds of things where it's rare. And then it has that significance too, because it's something different. It shows sort of an evolutionary change, a cultural change within
I've
in
played
golf.
golf for 73 years, so to me it's very
Right, exactly. And so that's an important object to tell a story. And that's what curators do. And curators take objects and they say, what's the story we want to tell? For instance, like Rancho Bernardo. Rancho Bernardo's story is unique. It fits inside the Southern California storyline, you know, Native American, Spanish, you know, this storyline that we all go through. But what, you know, what makes Rancho Bernardo unique are three, I define it as three things. One, it started off as a town that then disappeared. That's kind of unique. Doesn't happen very often. So they had the old Bernardo. You have a situation with the fact that it started off, it's only been a little over 50 years. So it was a planned community from the get-go. Most small communities, and you can say even in Southern California, started off with, you know, an old center town, and then they build out. Not Rancho Bernardo. Rancho Bernardo is unique because it doesn't have that. It started as a town. So that's really special and very different than any other, town in this area. And the other fun story, I think, is the sort of on and off not so good relationship with Escondido, starting with the whole water issues and the dam, and continuing now. You always hear it. So that's kind of a fun story. So, I mean, there are many stories beyond that, and then there's sub-stories in there. But objects are a great way to say those stories, to eventually say, this is how we want to talk about, how this, what's the best way to show, okay, this is a planned community from the beginning, that this is only 50 years old. Maybe some maps. Plat maps, maybe some architectural designs, things like that that actually tell that story.
My wife has a very special 87-year-old antique. Me.
Take care of him. Take care of him. Now you know how to look at him. Now you know. Yeah, you know how to look at him. Now just take care of him. Okay, so how is he valued though? That's what we're going to talk about. So what is value? Obviously, it's sentimental. So sentimental. Sometimes our objects are sentimental value. That's what it is. It's something that was passed down in our family. It doesn't necessarily mean that anybody else has that significance to it. You know, I have a music box. It's broken. It's, I'm sure, not worth anything, but it means a lot to me because it was my grandmother's, and she gave it to me, and so that's important to me. It's a piece of junk to anyone else, but to me it's hugely significant. So that's sentimental. And then you have historical, like we talked about. So the age of it, that it's old, that it's rare, its associations, maybe who it's associated with, its materials, what it's made out of. That could be also significant if it's something made out of a rare material or it's made in a certain way, the technique that it's made. Or that it has that history part to it, like your golf ball. It has some history to it that it can tell a story. And then you have the monetary value, which is what, when we talk about value, a lot of times that's all we think about. All we think about is money, and that's not necessarily true. When we talk about that, then that breaks down too. So your value in terms of your monetary value can be defined in different ways too. So we have market, auction, insurance values are all different. Okay, so if it's an heirloom, if that's what you have, try to write down everything you can. So it's what you've just told me, about the pieces that you talked about, what you talked about. Write it down somewhere. Keep it somewhere because that's the voice. That's what museums do. They catalog everything. They give the object a voice for people to find that object and find out what it is. I cannot tell you how many things that my grandmother had that I show my kids and they have no idea what it is. Oh, the rotary telephone. I found one in an antique store. I said, I'm going to get a rotary telephone. By the way, they don't work anymore. You can't use them because they require a dial tone now. Anyway, so I bought this rotary phone. I said, look, you guys. And I showed my kids who are in college. Let me just tell you, they're in college. I said, look at this phone. Dial my number on this. They pick it up and they're like this. They're putting their fingers through the holes. I'm like, no, you have to spin it. So, there are so many things. If we don't have that on a catalog card, we don't have that written down, not only just the significance, but what is it? How does it work? Why is it significant? These are really kind of neat things to have. And then you can pass those along. Okay, so maybe you're thinking you want to sell it. So if you're thinking that, you're thinking, you know, I think I want to sell my porcelain piece, I think I want to look at that. You want to look at what is your outcome, what's your reason for selling it. That's really important first. And then you want to figure out how much involvement you want to have in it, how much of it's going to be you selling it, and how much do you want someone else to deal with it. And then you want to figure out how you price that. So that, again, is how do we define value. The first way to do it is to get an appraisal. And there's people out there, that's all they do. And just like the conservators, they're specific. So you have people who do, there's a guy here who's head of the American Appraisal Society, he's actually in San Diego, and he's a specialist in weaponry. That's it. That's all he does is weaponry. There's other people who do, like I said, only metals, only paintings, only books, only, you know. And so you want to go to an accredited, so an appraiser that's been accredited, American Appraiser Association, and find them, because they'll do it ethically and they'll give you the right number. Then, once you know what the value is, go to a dealer. Because if you go to a dealer first, obviously, they're there to make money, so they're going to give you less than it's worth, because they're going to take the rest. That's how that works. So you need to know ahead of time before you go to a dealer. Then you want to figure out if you wanted to go with a gallery dealer, or a big dealer like Sotheby's, and how that, you know, depending on your collection. So if you decide to do an auction value, if you go to like a Sotheby's, remember they're going to take 30% off the top. So all of those sales in Sotheby's, and you look at those most recent ones, I think it was something went for $65 million. Sotheby's gets 35% of that. So that's huge. But yeah, but they'll market it for you, they'll get it out there, they'll push it, they'll say, hey, isn't this great, and all that stuff. So it depends on how you want to handle it, but just know they're going to take a bunch of it. Think about market value is now different than auction value, because auction value is what they estimate they can get for it, right? They're going to say, we can get this much for it, and we're going to push it for that value. Market value is going to be, it's a little bit affected by auction value, but not as much, and that's based on what the market's going to bear. And the best way to describe that is eBay, right? That's the best way to describe market value. So that's that supply and demand, right? So that's your market value, retail value. And insurance value is totally different. So in museums, we use insurance value all the time, which is a completely different number. And that is, what does it cost to conserve it? We're not going to replace it. You can't replace Lincoln's pillow. That's not something you can replace. But what is it? What is the value of that to conserve it? If someone comes in and, you know, cuts it, does something to it, damages it, what does that cost? So those are those different kinds of insurance, or those different kinds of values to keep in mind. So for instance, this little tea caddy, as an auction would be like $1,000, and when you see on Antiques Roadshow, at auction this will bring, that's what they're talking about, because they also are part of auction houses. And they hit them up afterwards too, by the way. And then the insurance value would be more than that, because a conservator is not too cheap. It's a pretty expensive process. Sometimes we deal with religious considerations that sometimes cause a whole new problem. So here we are, say, in a museum situation. You wouldn't have this so much at home, I don't think, but you might. Where you have, okay, I know how it's going to fall apart on the macro level, so I know what I need to do to take care of it. I know its significance in the community. But sometimes the object itself is still symbolic in a whole new way, a whole other way. So for instance, this is actually the most recent thing I did. This is a tabernacle, came from Germany, and right now we put it on display in what is the Christ Cathedral in Orange County. That tabernacle is on display, you can't touch it, it's a museum item. But when the cathedral gets built, they're going to put it into the cathedral and use it. So now it's completely changed context. So now it's going to be used, whereas before it was so these are kinds of, this is another example, Kachina masks. Kachina masks are hugely significant in the culture and are considered alive. So therefore you must feed them. They must be fed a cornmeal base all the time. Otherwise, horrible things happen. And the Smithsonian one time had some Kachina masks, and it may have been Obi, I don't recall exactly. Nation came in and said, "You have been neglecting these. This is terrible." And they started to feed them, and then, but before they came in to feed them, I guess a plane crashed. And they said, that's why that plane crashed, was due to take care of them. But these are really important things. So now Smithsonian has rules within their guidelines on the process of feeding the masks. But remember, on the micro level, bringing food into the collections, you're then asking for pests and bugs. So you're almost, defeating your purpose, but that's how it works. So oftentimes context can change, and we talked about that in terms of what the context is, and sometimes it stays the same, like in the mask situation. So in this situation, you have Dorothy's shoes, which were a prop. Right? They're a prop. That's just a prop on the prop table. The guy pulled out, time to get the shoes. Now they're in the Smithsonian. So they've changed context from a prop to a very important, significant museum item, which says a lot of story to it. There's a lot of story about that movie and the period that it was and the time it was made. This right here is a clock in the Treasury Department. This was a clock that was there in the very beginning when main Treasury was built. And it's still there, and they still use it, and they still wind it. So we have these dilemmas. When I was at Treasury, we had a sofa that we actually had a picture of it, or an etching actually of it. When Lincoln was shot, there was a time period where Mary Todd Lincoln wouldn't leave the White House, and she refused to leave the White House. And so Secretary Chase invited Andrew Johnson to operate the White House from the Treasury Department, which was right next door, in this one particular office, his office. So we decided we're going to look at all these Harper Magazine etchings and redo that office exactly the way it was. And the amazing thing about it was the furniture was still in the building. The original furniture was still in the building, and it had been just moved to this office and that office because whoever came in said, I'll take that chair, I'll take that chair, I'll take that chair. It never left the building. So we had these amazing historic pieces in the building. So we said, okay, we're going to recover it in fabric from Scalamari that's going to fit perfectly in the time period and everything. Turns out the person whose office it was a very large gentleman. These are very fragile pieces. So when we undid everything to recover it, we made notes of everything we were doing because this is still in use. It's not a museum item anymore, it's in use. How do you take a thing that actually should be in a case but make it useful? There's this whole wrap your mind around it. We put in structures inside, and then we wrote in an indelible, ink, what we did, the day we did it, why we did it, and then we put everything back together and put the fabric on it. So any time in future, if that ever they recover that, they'll know why. There's these extra bars inside and things like that. So that's what that is. So we use objects that obviously help us tell a story. So if I could ask you one quick question before we do questions for me. Can I ask you, objects that you have in your hands, could you tell me something about it and how you think it might tell a story? Do you want to start?
I think that...
Show everybody what you have.
I think it probably has sentimental value because it looks to me like a cat's toy.
Okay. Actually, that's interesting. That's actually a hair. You wrap your hair around it to make, they're curlers.
Oh.
And what's interesting about this, I don't know, in the past, you would use, before they made plastic curlers, you would actually use, and you could snap them close, and you wrap your hair, but you would actually use bits of, you would tear bits of fabric. Yeah, and you roll it. So it's the same, it's taking on an old story and making it new, sort of old technique and making it sort of new because it added snaps to it. But, so that's kind of an interesting story about history, right? Okay.
Mine's a keychain, and it looks like a miniature head, tennis shoe or something like this. I know it's something they gave to you when you were 10.
No, I have no idea right about it.
Oh.
But what does it tell you about, so what story could it tell you? How would you use it?
1948, we used to wear these.
Okay, that's good. Anybody else?
Well, it's got my dog then. And it says on here, Foo Chi. It so happened when I was 6 years old, we had a little poodle.
Oh,
And
was that his name?
no, Name Brown.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah. So that actually goes to the first sort of automated dog, sort of robot dog that came out, I think about 10, 15 years ago. Yeah, and that was part of his, and he was a robot dog, and he sort of waved in front, you know, like that was our sink, so we did the same thing. But back then, that was really great, and it would bark, and so that was, yeah. So it's kind of this early technology storyline.
I don't know, I think this might have been around some living being, so everybody would know where that living being was at any given
Bell.
time.
And there's so many things we could do about bells and stories. Yeah, yeah, it's like a sleigh bell. Yeah,
Oh,
like
yeah.
a little sleigh bell. So we have that whole story of that.
I think this is a salt shaker because it opens up and it has little holes in there.
Yeah.
And you can wind it up so when people
Yeah.
have their breakfast, a little shaker will
That's a good idea, and people have collections of salt shakers. That's good. That actually, what that is though, is you put gumballs in it and you wind it up and it walks, and the gumballs come out of it. Anybody else want to share their?
I have a Rolex watch.
You have a Rolex watch.
Oh,
Ooh, that's very nice. Yes, that is actually a knockoff though. So yeah, you can tell from the back. Yeah. Anybody else want to
I've
share?
got a new golf ball that must have been played by somebody famous. But it's
Must have been. That's why I
could
put
have
that.
been historical.
Yeah, it could be. But hey, it goes with that other golf ball story. So those two together, all you have to do is put two of them together, the smaller one and the bigger one, and then you have history. So anyway, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming and listening. If you have any questions for me, I think we have my minutes.
I've got a question. You want to keep these in great shape, but say you had an old desk and from like 300 years ago, and it was in the Chicago fire, and so there's water damage and a little smoke damage. Would the pristine desk or the one that?
The one with the smoke and the water. Because that's the story.
Yeah.
That's hugely significant. I mean, the Chicago fire, and you have pieces of the Chicago fire. You have the story there. So, yeah, sorry, I got goosebumps.
Unfortunately, I don't have that. But.
Yeah. But I would definitely, that's something, but that is exactly a beautiful, that damage becomes in itself the story. And so, yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, look, after 9/11, they did a whole exhibit on broken pieces of the towers, and you know that was showing that part of that story. So yeah.
Get a little comment on replicas versus the real thing.
Okay.
You know, and I don't know where to go with that question.
Yeah.
They're obviously different.
Right.
What makes them different? I mean.
Okay. That's a good question, because actually last 2 years ago, the American Association of Museums had their entire annual meeting on that topic, for the most part, the most of its entire annual meeting on that part. And it was that whole question about what makes an object, why do people come to museums? That was kind of the why do they want to see the original thing? And when is it that you can't show the original thing? And there's sometimes you can't. Sometimes the object is so valuable. For instance, the Star-Spangled Banner in the flag at the Smithsonian. So that's apparently the original flag that flew in 1812 or whatever, and they can't really show it. So what they've decided to do is to show it at certain times. So they have a panel that comes down. Okay, you can see it. Oh, they close it, now you can't. So they have this sort of thing. Same thing with the Declaration of Independence. So when they become so fragile that they can't show them, sometimes it does help to have a facsimile or a replica. The only thing in museums the standard is to indicate so that your visitor knows they're looking at a replica. So in other words, you say a historic replica or an exact replica of the Declaration of Independence. And that's what's really important. But there are times, where you just can't, because you have that problem of precision. So sometimes they work great.
Sounds like the mud wagon.
It's our mud wagon. Exactly. Yeah. And because it's a replica, we can take it places and we can do things with it, and which we would never be able to do with an original piece. I mean, we could, but it would be not very smart because we would lose it real fast. So this is a great way to disseminate information and get it out there and say, this is what it would look like, and yeah. In that case, it works great.
Who did you say to take a painting to have it evaluated or to see the authenticity of it?
Yeah, I would go to an appraiser, and I would go to
what kind of appraiser?
painting. Yeah, go to page, is it 20th century or is it?
Well, it's a little girl with a hairdo. It's the title. It was at the Brussels State Fair many years ago. And it's a Walter Keane.
Okay.
And now with the movie lately, Big Eyes.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's a
Okay.
little girl with
So
a
I would
hairdo.
look for a painting a painting appraiser, but someone that has 20th century expertise. Because you're going to have painting conservators that just do, you know, Renaissance stuff, and they're not going to really know as much. So you want to look for someone who specializes in modern or 20th
How about
century.
the museum?
The museums can't appraise things. Museums are not allowed to appraise. So, because what happens is you get a situation which happened a few decades ago at the Getty, which was really bad, which was they started appraising things and they would appraise them as part of their.
But they could tell you whether it's authentic or whether it isn't, if you needed to know.
Yeah, they could. It depends. If you have a specialist and a curator who could do that, they could do that. But I think you would get, if you went to an appraiser, you'd actually have it in writing, and it would sort of build a little more storyline and history to your painting. So that would be what I recommend. But yeah, you can definitely try that. They tend to be really busy, but if you can get in, then yeah, try that too. You do both, yeah.
Your comment about eBay, I was given a Chinese calligrapher or something as a gift a long time ago. I punched up eBay, and the first thing that popped up was an exact duplicate, a sister or a brother of the piece I have, and on the first try. And price, X $1,000. Yeah. Here.
So there you go. You know what it's
So
about.
then it's easy because then you send it to different people and say, I've got exactly this, and they want 3,000.
Yeah.
I want whatever.
Yeah.
And
No, that's a good
Go
point.
fast.
And that sometimes that may be your first stop. Is check on eBay and see what the market. You'll find market value at that point.
the market.
Yeah. So and that's definitely a good way to start too. Just doing your own little bit of research online. Yeah. Anything else? Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.